guy comes flying over the rise in a truck, and he's totally drunk, and he's headed right for my car. And all of a sudden, I'm driving right through the guy's car, and he looks over at me. It's like, huh?
This is Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. I'm your host, Trapper Jack, and here's where we show you those everyday collisions of heaven and earth, God showing us his hand, shooting off the flare gun, if you will, saying, do you see me here? What about here and here? 3 incredible divine intervention moments today from Mike Daigle. He's written a book. It's called Divine Interventions, A Happy Result of Pre-Praying. He'll explain that title to you in a bit here. But his stories, I mean, he could have drowned to death, been stabbed to death. He could have been in a car accident. And that could have taken his life. 3 amazing moments that he will explain to you today here on Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God.
I just found out about you from listening to Coast to Coast.
Oh, okay. That worked out pretty well. That worked out pretty well. Yeah.
Oh, you were great on the show.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
And you really impressed the host. Oh, you'll be asked back many times. You're very direct. It was refreshing. The way you do it with your sense of humor, for one thing, that really it lightens things up. It makes people want to understand more and hear more about what you're talking about, and it's fun to listen to.
Oh, I
it's
appreciate
really easy. That. Finally decided that I just write you and say that I just written a book back in December.
There you go. Oh, yeah, the divine interventions and all of that for you, right? Right? You've had a few of those occasions.
Oh, yeah. I was like on the brink of death, and I've literally heard the voice.
The voice? What did the voice say? What did the voice say?
Well, many different things. I had one time I was in the river. I was on a raft trip, and this is down the Deschutes River, and I'd never been in a raft like that before. There was a bunch of us. I think there was 6 or something, and we were told by the guide that there's this one place in the river where you can, you're wearing tennis shoes and you can jump in the river and kind of sit down, and you'll float down the river. And if you go into a rock, you have your tennis shoes on and you can bounce off, and no problem. It's a safe place in the river. And then the current will just take you to the side. So 2 of us wanted to do it. So this one guy jumps in, and then I followed him, shortly afterwards. And he's floating down the river. By this time, the raft has gone past both of us, and it's already way down the river. And I'm looking at my friend in front of me, and he's turning around facing me, and then all of a sudden he goes straight down, just disappears without any warning.
Wait, you guys have life jackets on or not?
Yes, we do.
And he still went straight down.
He still went straight down. That's how strong the current was.
Wow.
So I go, oh my goodness, what? Oh boy, here we go. And I'm heading for the same exact spot. So I float down the river, and I knew I was going to be pulled under. So I took a really deep breath, and I went straight down. And I opened my eyes, and it was all murky and muddy, and you couldn't see a thing. And the current was just really strong, and I was being pulled down. And there was really nothing much I could do. I was fighting. I was trying to get to the top. And the more I fought, the harder it was. And I finally got to the point, it seemed like hours. I ran out of breath. And I go, well, I guess if this is how I'm supposed to go, then okay, so be it. And all of a sudden, I heard this voice. And it's a male voice. It said, let go. That's it. Let go. And I'm going, here I'm pretty much dead, no breath left. And I'm thinking, what is this? And then it comes again, it repeats. Very direct, positive voice, let go. So I just went totally limp. and my body flips upside down, and I go straight up to the top of the water, and I go up above it like a bobber. And I come up, when I come up out of the water, I come up so fast that I'm like, I come up to about my waist up above the water. I mean, I was way down the bottom. And then I realized what had happened is when I was trying to fight to go upwards, I was fighting to go downwards.
You were all flipped around. You were all flipped around.
And I couldn't see it.
Yeah. Wow. How about your friend? Your friend get out okay?
And that's the other part. So what happens is I instantly look for him, and I couldn't see him. And I'm looking, and so where I came up was on the left side bank, and I'm looking around, I can't see him, and finally I see this head bob up, and it's on the other side of the river, totally across from me, and it's him. And we look at each other, and it's like we just started laughing. It's like nobody's going to believe this. Absolutely nobody will believe this.
Wow. But he was down longer than you were then.
Way longer.
Yeah.
There's no way he could have lived. I don't know how he did. Wow. I mean, that's just, it felt like it was 3 minutes. It was a long time. I mean, I don't know how long a person can hold their breath under the water, but
with that kind of strain, that's what makes it so interesting. Is that you're straining, you're struggling, you're trying to get up when you're actually going down. All of those things are going on.
Yeah,
and then to hear the let go, male voice, female voice, just an inner voice.
It was a male voice.
Male voice. Oh, male voice.
There was no question.
Did you attribute that to God, angel? The great universe. Where did you categorize that?
That's a good way of saying it. Like when I was telling you before, okay, God, if this is the way I'm going to go, then so obviously it was, yeah, you can call it whatever you want. I know it was, and I write this in the book, it was almost the exact same voice. Remember in the movie, The 10 Commandments, when God is talking from the burning bush?
Always a deep voice. You never get a God like this. Hey, Moses, over here. Bring the marshmallows. You never hear that version. Never. It's always the God voice.
This was a voice. This is like your father when you've either done something really good or really bad. It's like, okay, well, this is what's up. This is what's going to happen. I mean, you listen, you don't mess with it. Is that kind of a flow to it?
Kind of an authoritative kind of thing.
Yes, but in a very good way.
At that moment, are you conscious enough to look up and go, okay, you just saved my life. What for?
Heck yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
I'm down on my knees. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, you bet. It was pretty obvious.
Okay, so do you ask for why did you save me, or just trust enough that along the way you'll find out what you're being saved for?
I said thank you, and I go, I guess you want me around for more things. More things are going to be happening, aren't they? And I didn't hear a voice, but I got a message, of course.
Yeah. And you don't have to know what that is right now, but you're still around. I call it being in the bubble. It's like you are fulfilling your purpose. You're in the bubble. You're on the right track. And okay, tell me about your faith upbringing here. To see kind of where this kind of coincides with that. I'm curious where that all goes.
Well, believe it or not, I was raised Catholic. There was many things that I liked, but I wasn't getting the connection with God that I felt I should. Let's put it that way. So I went searching, and I made some mistakes, like we all do, and I got involved in a cult. Ta-da! In Scientology, of all things.
Wow, you've had an experience then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, I've read some of the books. I've read some of the books from people who were in it, then out of it. It's like, whoa.
Pretty Pretty amazing. I was in it for 7 years and finally got out of it.
More with Mike Daigle coming up here on Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. These stories point out that the miraculous did not stop 2,000 years ago, still going on. God still being God, whether it's divine interventions or miraculous healings or encounters with angels, whatever it is. And I would love to be at your church, at your venue, at whatever that next speaking engagement is. You can go to trapperjackspeaks.com, check out my video, check out what people say about me behind my back. Sometimes they're called testimonials, but you can check them out at trapperjackspeaks.com. All right, contact me there. Also, I want to thank you for your support financially through Patreon. Go again to touchedbyheaven.net and just click your way through, become a patron, and whatever amount makes sense to you on a month-to-month basis. I thank you for that. You help us continue Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. I also want to let you know that in the show notes of episode 27, you will see a link to Mike's book, which is called Divine Interventions, A Happy Result of Pre-Praying. We have a link to that book. It's a wonderful book with these stories. So check that out at touchedbyheaven.net. Let's have Mike explain the title.
Divine Intervention, A Happy Result of Pre-Praying.
Pre-praying. Love that. Love that. Explain it.
So basically, a lot of people pray when something bad happens. They pray and pray and pray and hope that, somebody will be cured of the cancer, or they'll pray that, their son in the war will live through the war, or somebody's in a car accident. We'll pray that you'll live. But you don't hear about pre-praying, where you literally pray about what it is that you want in your life and positive things coming towards you, people, experiences. The fact that you and I are even talking together is because of pre-praying.
Yeah, I totally get that. And what it demonstrates is faith, that you have faith that there is somebody listening. There's somebody listening. And really what you're praying for is that you follow, is that you do what you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do it, and that you are open to all the signs. So even though you're praying that God does A, B, C, D, and E, you're really praying that you do A, B, C, D, and E, that you don't miss it. You don't miss what has already been planned for you. Yeah.
And then when it happens, I'm not really surprised. I am, but I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And so I've actually gotten to the point, not all people, not many people think the way I do about life. Every single thing that happens in my own life is happening for a reason, in its own way, in its own time. And my job is to figure that out. But it's like, why is it that some Joe Blow gets shot and killed on the street? He wasn't doing anything wrong. Well, you can literally be guided away from instances like that. I don't have things like that happen in my life at all. Nothing like that. I run into great people. I have great experiences. I have people around me get stressed out with things. I'm very thankful for my life in many different ways, because there's obviously a bigger purpose going on. It's pretty obvious.
He's shooting off the flare gun, as I put it, saying, do you see me here? Do you see me here? This isn't coincidence. This isn't just coinkydink. This isn't just your subconscious. This isn't the great universal spirit. All this nonsense you hear out there. This is real. And my feeling is that your story should be brought into church.
So you want to hear another story?
Yeah. Are we out of the river? Are you sure you want to jump out of the river just yet? Is there anything else about the river you would like to tell us about? I mean, that was pretty cool.
I have another pretty amazing thing that happened to me in the book. Another time where I should have died, but I didn't. I used to be married, and my wife and I and her mom and aunt, we were going to we wanted to go on a camping trip. Anyway, we get on the road around Crater Lake, and it was 12 midnight, and all of a sudden the camper breaks down. And we go, oh, what are we going to do? And it was getting pretty cold. So I said, why don't just 3 of you stay here? I'm going to go get help. So they turned on the oven to warm themselves up, and I got in the car and drove to find help. I'm driving back around on the road, and I remember when we drove in, there was a place where there's as you're driving in, it's like a 2-lane road pretty much all the way around, except for this one place where there's only room for one car. So as I'm driving back, I'm like thinking to myself, oh, I got to be careful when I get to this one place, because if somebody's coming from the other way, and they're going too fast, well, what would I do? I can't go to the right. I go into the lake. I can't go to the left. There's big boulders. I can't stop, and I can't go forward because I'd hit the person, and I can't back up. And then right then, this guy comes flying over the rise in a truck. There's one guy, he's driving, and he's totally smashed. I can still see him right now. And he's totally drunk, doesn't know where he is, and he's headed right for my car. And I said the quickest prayer you could ever say. Okay, God, if I'm supposed to die right now, that's what's going to happen. If not, then there's going to be a miracle. So I just kept going straight. And all of a sudden, the entire car and my body, they became like Casper the Friendly Ghost. And I could see right through to the ground, but I could still see my body in the car. I'm holding the steering wheel and I can see through it, but it's like I'm in another dimension or something. I don't even know how to explain it. But I can totally see the ground. I glanced down for just a second, and then I look back up, and all of a sudden I'm driving right through the guy's car. And I'm literally 3 feet away from him, and I'm passing him on his left side, he's on my right rather. So I'm passing him on the left, going right through his car. And he looks over at me, and the look on his face is priceless. It's like, huh? And I get to the other side of his car, and the car became solid again, and my body became solid again. And I slammed on the brakes, and I walked up to his car because he had stopped. And I said, roll down the window. I'm motioning with my hand, and he's shaking his head back and forth. No. And I said, don't be afraid. I'm just a guy just like you are. There's nothing special here. Just roll down the window. I just want to talk. So he finally gathers up the courage and rolls down the window. And he says, did what just happen really happen? And I said, yeah, it did. And he was no longer drunk. This guy was totally shocked straight. And I look at him, and I said, I don't think this was for me. This was for you. And I said, I don't know why I'm saying this, but you probably have a wife and a couple of kids at home, don't you? And he looks at me and he goes, how could you possibly know that? Are you? And I go, no, I'm just a normal person. But you have something. He says, I've got a wife and 2 kids at home. And I said, if I were you, I'd never drink again. I think this was your last wake-up call. I'd never drink again. Go back and love your family. And so he thanked me, and I never heard from him again. Didn't even know his name.
That was a wow. That was a wow. I have friends who had something similar where it was bad. It was going to be head on. Somebody in a Corvette, if memory serves, speeding, and suddenly, boom! Here's the van with the wife and It was the mom and the kids in the car and quick prayer. And next thing is she sees his face going right by, and he's looking at her too. Kind of the same thing, like what?
Wow.
And the two cars went right through each other, you know. And it's just so striking that God can do that, you know. And of course, He can do anything. If it's not your time yet, it's not your time yet. It was not your time yet. And as you say, I think it was a wake up for him. And you hope he took it, ran with it.
Oh,
you know?
though I know he did. There's no doubt in my mind.
He's still telling this. He's on another podcast this week telling his story.
Probably.
So I was an alcoholic with a wife and a couple of kids, and one day I'm tooling down this road, and suddenly this guy. You know.
Well, I'm hoping at some point he will come across.
Yeah.
Either reading the book or hearing the podcast or something, and realizes, oh my goodness, this is the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Let's after Scientology, what did you go to? Join anything or afraid to?
No, I wasn't afraid to. I just started looking for answers in other ways. I knew that wasn't the route, obviously. I started investigating all sorts of things. I'm an explorer. I always have been. And I'll take the road that hasn't been traveled. I can say it this way. I want to interact with the highest of the high, the holiest of the holy, the wisest of the wise, and nothing else. That's what I want in my experience. And that's what's happened. If you did that, there's no way that anything else can even come near, because if it does, it's going to leave shortly, because you're not even close. Your energy, your beingness, everything about you isn't like that. You can't, you're like a magnet, and you'll repulse this thing. That's anything that's negative like that.
Discernment is always the key. Discernment is this a good thing or not a good thing? Where's it coming from? Is it feeding my ego, or is it feeding a higher place? That kind of thing.
For me, I wanted to hear a voice, but I also want to have the feelings. I also wanted to, and I want to know for sure that this is coming from a good place. And it's like you have no doubt. I mean, there's not any, because if you're afraid, you're going to pull in the negative. I'll put it that way. And the people that say that God doesn't talk to them, God's talking to them all the time, all the time. Mm-hmm. They just can't hear. They've lost their hearing. They need hearing aids.
There is, and I've said this too, is that God speaks to us in the miraculous. God speaks to us in the nudges, and there's so many different ways. But we keep expecting someone to walk into our room and go, "Sit down. Let me tell you what's going on in your life." And it's not the way. There are not enough words. He can't express His love for us that way. How does He express love? Well, two cars passing through each other is pretty good. Yeah. That's pretty good. Plunking you out of the water, that's pretty good. And other things, small things, little things, big things, those are beautiful. That's God speak. Because God speaks in the miraculous. And my point of why I'm evangelizing inside churches now. You hear what God did today? He plunked a guy out of the river. Two cars passed through each other. These are great stories. Or Fatima or Our Lady of Guadalupe or whatever, where these amazing things happen. Just tell people. As I said to George Norrie, I'm a storyteller. I don't try to convince anybody of anything. I got tired of doing that. I'm not going to waste my breath anymore. But you want to hear a story? I'll tell you a story, just as you're telling stories. And you don't have to say a word after that. You have to say a word. Is there another story? Mr. Mike?
There's many stories.
Tell me another story.
You want another one? Okay.
Give me another story. We'll have the Triple Crown. Give me your third story.
Okay. I used to live in Sacramento. This was when I was...
My place of birth, by the way.
Oh, my goodness. This is back when I'm a Scientologist, and I'm supposed to be going around talking to people about Scientology. And it's 12 midnight. And I say in my book that I just happen to that I'm downtown in Old Sacramento. I don't put the Scientology part in there, but I'm telling you the straight skinny. So anyway, I I'm down there. I'm by myself, and everything's pretty much closed up, and there's nobody around. I stop at this window and I'm looking at it, and all of a sudden I hear this voice again, and it says pretty dramatically, "Turn around and look right in his eyes." And I go, "Huh?" And it says it again, very directly, "Turn around and look straight in his eyes." So I go, "Okay, well, it's my life has been saved before. I'm following it." Okay. I turn around, and there's this guy with a knife in his hand, and it's raised, and he's about to stab me. I didn't even hear him coming. And I turn around and I look at him, and I look right in his eyes. And I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden, all this fear he was trying to put on me, it's like I became like a mirror or a reflection, or everything was reflected back to him. And he had this look of terror on his face. I don't know if God appeared behind me, an angel appeared behind me, something happened. That's the only thing I can think of. And all of a sudden, he just turned around and ran away.
What is it they're seeing? We had a gal, episode 3 or 2, 3, whose a guy was turning around and he was going to do something bad, and he saw something similar. This has happened a number of times where people see something, hear something, and it just freaks them out. Freaks them out.
I had a guy that he didn't believe in God at all. This guy used to serve me coffee at the hospital where I work, and I'm the floor guy there. Anyway, he's serving me coffee, and he hears all the rumblings around the hospital. Oh, Mike wrote a book. You got to read this thing. So he's really curious, and he says, "What's it all about?" And I said, "Well, you may not like it because you may just throw it away, and that's fine. I'm not here to convince anybody of anything, but all I'm doing is just sharing what I've experienced." And so, but I think out of everybody that will ever read this book, you'll probably get the most out of it. So he went online and bought it and read it, and he read it right away, and he didn't put it down. And he saw me the next day, and he says, "Mike, I read it." And I go, "Well, what do you think?" And he says, "Well, it's kind of interesting. You've actually shown me that because I know you, and you're not going to just write something down that isn't what it is. I mean, you wrote the book the way you talk, and I really appreciated the way you did that, because it was really easy for me to understand, and you didn't make this stuff up. It's pretty obvious that it happened. And so it's shown me that I actually need to look for something more, that there's something else going on here. It's actually caused me to change the way I think about things. And I got to thank you for that." And I said, "Okay, well, you'll probably have more things happen as a result of this. Start observing things closer, because nothing in life is an accident. There's always a reason for it in the way that you're experiencing it. And just pay attention. If you have to get a journal going, write down, because you're going to have all sorts of miracles yourself, and you all already have had them. The fact that we're even talking right now is pretty amazing, because I don't just run into just anybody. Everybody that I talk to, ever since the first time I almost died, there's always been some sort of a reason for it. And I just am very appreciative that I'm still going strong here.
To me, that's church. You just described church. That's church. You gave him church. You gave him what God was doing, the awesomeness of God. And to me, that's church. That's what it should feel like. That dazzle, that awesomeness is what we should all be feeling with our God. That's beautiful. Name of your book again, and then we'll close it out here, Mike.
Okay, it's called Divine Intervention, A Happy Result of Pre-Praying.
And available where?
Amazon Books.
Okay, very good.
And you have to look up Mike Daigle, Daigle, to find it.
Yeah, there's a lot of divine intervention books, obviously. So, well, this has been a delight, Mike. Thank you so much for this.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Mike Daigle. Again, the book is Divine Interventions, A Happy Result of Pre-Praying. There's a link at episode 27 of Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. Love to get your story. What is your story? Your encounter with God, angels, divine interventions, visions, prophetic dreams. Let me know by going to touchedbyheaven.net. Touchedbyheaven.net. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. And I'll see you next week on Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack.